Now you refer to them as transitional?
Yes, I refer them to them as transitional experiences because death is an illusion.
Definitely.
Because nothing really ends. It's like walking through a doorway, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And
Basically.
then some of us walk back
Yeah, yeah.
to tell the story. Like
Possibly
a
thousands of
revolving
times.
door.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Okay.
So I do, yeah, because there's so much fear in people's minds about death. And when people ask me in one-on-one sessions, I tell them, I said, when you get that close to transitioning, there's no pain, there's no fear, there's no, there's none of the things that we apply to the word death and the meaning of death and the fear that comes with death. So yeah, I prefer to say a transitional experience because then it lightens it, I think, a little bit.
Good evening. Welcome to Earth to the Other Side. My name is John. I'm your host, and tonight I'm speaking with James K. Newman, who had two near-death experiences back in 2005. We're going to talk about that and as well about his vibrational art. Very interested in sharing that with you guys as well. Now, James, you often refer to this as transitional experiences. I'll let you explain why you do that. I'm going to hand the floor over to you, and you can tell us all about it. Thanks for being here, by the way.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
My pleasure.
Um, I refer to it as a transitional experience because the word death frightens so many people, and it frightens them for all of the illusional reasons. When we transition from this state of being, this physical world, it is literally no different than just walking through a doorway. And when you arrive at that place of preparation to transition, whether it is some people have had accidents, some people have had severe illness, some people have had just really interesting experiences and transitions. And those of us can tell you that have done that can tell you that there's no pain and there's no fear and there's none of the things that death seems to call upon for people, their ideas of death and things like that. So yeah, I choose to call it a transitional experience to lighten it a little bit.
It makes total sense what you're saying.
Yeah.
Let's get into the near-death experiences. What happened with them? They were 3 weeks apart, you said, right?
I was living in Hawaii and I was going through a very, very, very challenging time in my life. I had honestly kind of given up. I just couldn't figure out even what the next right step was. And I had become homeless and, wasn't taking care of myself at all. Sometimes I didn't even eat and things like that. And I began to get ill. And I had some wonderful friends that I had made there. And one of the friends, her partner was a really amazing acupuncturist. And she said, James, let me see if he will see you and at least try and help and see what we can do. And when I went to see him, I was I was really close to transitioning. And when I went into the room where he did his work, I could feel the presence there like something I'd never felt before. And he asked me a few questions. I cannot even remember the questions, the practitioner, what he asked me. But I immediately laid down on the bed and I knew something was about to happen, but I didn't know what. I was thinking, oh, maybe it's this place that I'm in and all of this kind of thing. And as soon as I laid down, I could hear his voice just kind of go away. Like the volume just, he was still talking, but the volume just went down and down. And I was no longer there. And the first thing that I was aware of was this incredibly warm, loving, immense love. and this maternal feeling that I had never experienced in this journey in my physical life in this time here. And all of a sudden I could feel literally what I felt like was a contraction. But I didn't understand what that was like, but I could feel this immenseness around me. And the next thing I experienced was me. I could see me as an infant child, and I could see me in the ocean where I am most at home. I love swimming out in the open ocean. No matter how deep the water is, I feel at home there. And I realized that I had transitioned, but I didn't realize where I was until I could feel the arrival of a sibling. And in that presence of a sibling appeared the mother whale that I paint a lot on in some of my artwork. And I realized at that moment that I had been reborn, that something that had created such a barrier for me in my physical life had instantly been wiped away. Never having known what maternal love felt like, suddenly I got to experience it, and there I was. And I know that I transitioned due to the layer of, it was as if you can imagine this spherical experience, myself, the mother whale, and the sibling, they're swimming in the ocean and just feeling that mother's protection and that mother's love and the strength of that love and all these things. But then I could feel an outer sphere of the presence of something omnipresent that was just so beautiful and so loving and so it's like as the word comes, the so I felt so watched over and protected and safe, probably for the first time in my life. And all of this just, it was as if somebody pushed fast forward on a well, what used to be a tape. Younger people wouldn't know what that means, but pushed fast forward on a tape, and it just went like I bypassed a whole lot of things that I no longer needed to experience or witness or be a part of. And it literally gave me a quantum leap forward. And of course, it's impossible to gauge time, but I didn't feel like, but maybe 15 or 20 minutes had passed, and all of a sudden I could feel something pulling on my wrist, like pulling down on my wrist. And surely enough, it was the practitioner, and he was trying to revive me. And I remember coming back into the room, back into the awareness of the room, and probably for, I don't know, a few minutes, that same presence that I felt coming into the room first it's if it was standing there. It was just completely there, completely present, and I realized that that was my own soul itself. Now coming forward in from a different perspective of awareness, that aperture that I spoke about a few minutes ago, just blown wide open and to see everything. And the practitioner started to talk to me and trying to get me to be coherent. And it was for a little bit, I don't know how to say in time, I couldn't hear him. It was like I couldn't hear him. And then slowly, it was just the way his voice faded, it came back. It came back in. And he says, he says, can't you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you see me? Can raise your hand, do anything to respond? And that's what I did. I raised my hand. And he said to me, he says, you've been here for almost 3 hours. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. For my awareness, it was maybe 10 minutes from the way that whole fast forward thing and that whole shifting of awareness. And he says, I need to take your blood pressure. I need to make sure that you're all here. And and he did. And so he let me lay there for a while. And then in the meantime, he had called my friend, Karen, that was his partner, and she had gotten there and she took me out and she asked me what happened. And I didn't know how to tell her. At that moment, I was afraid to tell her. And I don't know why I was afraid to tell her because it was a beautiful experience. But a part of me was unsure how that might be received. So I kept it to myself
Hmm.
at that point until the second one happened a few weeks later.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that. Um, when you were explaining the beginning of the transition, you'd mentioned like at one point you were just no longer there. So
Hmm.
I guess right before your awareness, you know, resurfaced elsewhere, that moment, do you remember a lot about that moment when you just weren't anywhere?
Yeah, that there was just absolute stillness. I felt like I feel when like I would feel like when I would go out in the ocean and do a long distance swim,
Hmm.
and when I would finish, always when I would finish, I would just lay on my back and float and say thank you. Thank you for the water, thank you for the safety, thank you that I made it back. All those things. It was that stillness,
Hmm.
and I could feel surrounded by warm water. If there was water there, I don't know. But it was that feeling that I
Yeah.
have of comfort in the water. I didn't see anything until the birth part, until I could see myself as the infant self in the water.
Hmm.
Even when the contraction was happening and things, I still couldn't see anything. I could feel, I could feel this presence, like I was in, like it was like a glove that had was fitted over me.
And you'd mentioned the presence of a sibling. Can you expand on that a little bit? Is like, did you eventually communicate with this presence or figure out exactly what it was?
Well,
There was two,
it was
right? There was
another.
two
There was
beings that you
myself
encountered. Hmm.
and the sibling, and then mother whale. It was another baby whale.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I could see myself as the tow-haired blonde little boy,
Hmm.
and my sibling. I feel like now it was a brother. And off we went swimming, following Mama in the
Hmm.
water. Me and my physical body, and in the whale and its whale physical body, and the mother and her immenseness
What do you
there.
think the significance of it being a whale could be, I wonder?
Um, it has to do with a part of my soul origins,
Hmm.
um, because my soul origins are from the Navajan people, from the Phoenician
Okay.
galaxy.
Hmm.
And we are a people who reside in a vibrational state that is on the edge of the universe. And we are keepers of a passageway of wisdom. And that's what this is all about. This piece that was presented to me by about 4 or 5 months ago by a mother whale, the presence of a mother whale that I painted. I can show you the painting later.
Hmm.
Um, So the whales are playing an immense part of how the wisdom that is being introduced into this realm now, after the eons and eons of time that we as humans were sent here to gather wisdom in the experiences and the events of our lives to gather the wisdom, the gifts of those experiences, no matter how challenging or even horrific they may have seemed. Each one of those events held a piece of wisdom in it. And it's the expression of that wisdom that the mother whales, especially, are assisting the planet in receiving. And my people of origin, we are the keepers of one of those gateways of the passage of wisdom between realms, between this physical realm and the ethereal realm and beyond.
It really feels like the way you're explaining this. I could just feel that, duality, not duality, but dual realm. Like, almost like you're
Mm-hmm.
in between realms. That's so cool. Um,
Yes.
let's get into the second NDE, the NDE number two. What happened there?
So the acupuncture didn't change much. I kept getting, sicker and sicker, and I what I was sick with was a severe bout of anemia, and I myself had just given up on life. My childhood was a very beautifully violent one, because every event had just immense lessons in it. But I only started being able to see those lessons and those gifts after the second transitioning experience. So about 3 weeks later, and I'd have to actually go back to the hospital there in Hilo, Hawaii, to find out if they have my records exactly when it was, but it was right around this time. It was towards the end of March in 2005. So I went to Karen's house. I couldn't work anymore. I couldn't do anything. Was barely here. And she took me in and kept me at her place for a couple of days. And she said, James, she says, you've got to go to the hospital. She says, you have to go to the hospital. She says, I know what you feel about all of this and you've given up, but you need to go and see what can be done to save your life. And I just said, okay. So I went and I was admitted into the hospital. And by the time, I don't know, I guess this was early in the morning. And by the time the evening had come, it was that thing again. I could not really hear people's voices again. And I remember that one doctor came in at one point, and I was just laying in the bed, just looking up, I had surrendered. And a doctor came in and said, oh, well, we've done quite a bit of blood work today, but the only thing we can tell you is that we think you have leukemia because you are so severely anemic and your bone marrow has just shut down. It's not producing blood cells. And all I could hear that in a distance, but there was like it's like I was like, okay. I almost wanted to look at the doctor and say, you're not telling me anything I don't know. I was fully aware of what was happening with my body. And all of a sudden, then he kind of paused. He says, well, Mr. Newman, I have to tell you, we think you have leukemia. And at that moment is as if that fast forward happened again. And I thought I was like right here. Like his face was right here, like I was this close to him, but I wasn't. I mean, he was standing beside the bed. I just know that the only thing I did was I turned my head over and I said, no, that's not it. And then I went back to looking up towards the ceiling, and the voice again got distant. And to my recollection, then about 2 days after that is when I transitioned. And I transitioned, and that same stillness of in the water came. I really didn't see anything during the transition, and all of a sudden, it's as if I don't know if you've been to the theater. If the theater can be really dark, and all of a sudden the lights start to come up, and the stage appears, and all of that kind of thing. And I was in a train station, an underground. like a subway station. It didn't look anything like a subway station here on Earth, but I knew I was in a place making a connection to go somewhere else. And there were lots and lots and lots of other beings there. And I had absolute full awareness what each of them was doing there, and that they were also making that same, like a train connection and going to another place. And what I learned afterwards was that that was a transition of a different soul aspect, a different facet of the soul was going to be taking over the journey and coming in, almost what people would call a walk-in. And um, I was there, and again, that I can't tell you how long I was there, but I remember as if when I first arrived, it was as if I was sitting on a chair or a bench, against the wall and just watching the people go by, but there was no human forms. There were just like an outline, of his shoulders and a head, but everything was Pacific blue, just like the Pacific Ocean all around the island. It was this beautiful blue, and there were hues of lighter blue right around what would be the head shape of the beings that were there. And there, I could tell that there was everything from little kids to grandparents to middle-aged people. I mean, it was this as if there were these people transitioning, even little children having these transitional experiences, and that new facets of them were coming in. And all of a sudden, then, it was as if I was taken to this place to say, okay, here's what we have to share with you. But yet, those words weren't being spoken. But yet, I knew that that's what was happening. I was getting ready to receive something, information, wisdom, whatever that was. And two things stood out to me. In that state of being, as our soul state of being, there isn't anything that we don't hold awareness of. There are no mysteries. There are no secrets. There are no, you know, oh, I don't know. I'll have to figure that. No, we are aware of everything in this physical world, in the ethereal world, in other dimensions, and other universes, parallel universes, just like we're aware of all of it. And I was being constantly shown different aspects of things and how to access them. How, if we return to this soul state of awareness, that we have access to all of it. And after that seemed to be instilled, it's like, okay, I came to, okay, I get it. I got that. Then the love came. And it was a love that I don't know that we ever experience here on this earth. It was this embracing, uplifting, omnipresent, um, as if there weren't anything else. Just this immense, immense, immense love. And for me, that was the presence of Source itself.
Was this while you were still in the presence of the other souls in the room,
Oh
or?
yeah, they were all well. The souls were there, but it's as if I was like taken to a state of being, like a spherical space. It wasn't separate from them, but it was like I was like
Different
the
realm?
focus was right here. It
Okay.
wasn't out there anymore. It wasn't like looking around. It was like right here to make sure that I was receiving all of this awareness, that had gotten it, that I had fully received it. And then the next thing that occurred was this just, and again, it wasn't a voice in words like we're talking, but it was this awareness telling me, now, remember how this feels. Remember this vibrational state, because you can always return here. You don't have to transition to return here. All you have to do is align yourself with the awareness of your soul. And you can come here to this state of being and receive all this and so much more of what you're experiencing here. And then remember feeling that laying back and floating in the water state again. And then I got abruptly returned. I don't know how to say that. It's like, it wasn't like I was sent anywhere. It's like I returned because I know that it was morning, and I remember that when I transitioned, I remember the sun going down, and I returned really abruptly in a shock and could hear everything immediately because I had been put in a bath of ice, and water was being just poured over me, poured over me, poured over me. And there was a tarp, and it was like, I wasn't in a bathtub, but I was in something that had higher sides and a tarp. And there was this big kahuna guy, this nurse, and he was huge. And he was pouring ice over my whole body and the water, he kept pouring the water. And I waked up and I said, what? And, like, like, what are you doing? I almost thought like, oh my gosh, I had the swimmer's reaction to hold my breath, and they're like, no, no, don't hold your breath. I thought, well, I might have been in the water that I was drowning, but then I could feel the ice cold, and all of a sudden, they started to talk to me again, but at that time there wasn't this flow coming on of the volume. I was all there, you know, wide awake and just freezing to death, and asked them, well, why did you do this to me? And they were saying, well, your temperature had gotten past anything that we thought you would be able to return from. And we imagined that if you did return, that you wouldn't be able to speak and you wouldn't be able to. They didn't use the term, but it's as if they were saying your brain was literally frying. Um, and again, I'd have to go back and look at medical records to see what my temperature was, but they said it was so high that we had given you medication and other things, and we had to just try the ice and see. And after everything calmed down, one of the nurses that I remember seeing when I first came in, she came in, she came by the bed, and she says, well, I want to ask you some things. And I said, okay. She said, well, do you remember doing this? And do you remember doing that? She said I had gotten up out of the bed and I was up, literally up on a chair on the wall. And it was just like as if I was at the chair that I was in the subway or the train station or wherever it was. And I said, no, I said, I was in the train station. And then she looked at me and then she asked me a couple of questions, and I could tell immediately that she thought, something did happen. Meaning she thought I'd gone cuckoo or something, that I'd lost my faculties or something like that. And I'm like, no, no, you don't understand. I said, I left this world. And I knew that this time I wasn't afraid to say it for whatever reason, for whatever I had received at that point, I wasn't afraid to say it. I said, no, I left this world. And then she went, okay. And then she left the room. And then, of course, here comes the doctor, back. And then he's asking me all the questions. And I'm like, I don't think I need to say anything right now.
When the chair thing happened, was this where was that like when did this happen in relation to them icing you?
It was during the night. What I'm imagining was during that night. So for what I can imagine, I guess I was gone for quite a few hours. And they were doing different things that my brain was still functioning. So I had brain function. They tested that, but yet they couldn't get me to wake up, revive, whatever. And my temperature, they said, just kept going up and up and up. So that happened. That was during the night at some point.
Okay. And was this all in
Because I
relation to the
remember
anemia?
waking up and I'm sorry.
Was all of these symptoms that you were experiencing, were they in relation to the anemia?
I don't know. I don't know. The anemia had caused my part of my nervous system to shut down. And I was what did they call that? It's a peripheral something response where my hands weren't functioning right, and like from my knees down into my feet weren't functioning right. I couldn't get up and walk. And I thought, well, how did I get over to the chair? And then, and I'm there against the wall waiting for my train to come or something. And but yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of it that I kind of just left there at the hospital, the medical part of it, because it took about I was there in the hospital for probably another 3 to 4 weeks, and they had just their intention was find out who any family member of mine and figure out where they could put me on a plane and send me to because they had no idea that I would live, that I would survive what I'd been through.
You mentioned at the train station something about a walk-in. So was this in reference to all the souls that you were witnessing? Were they walk-ins, or did you?
Well, it's so our souls, if at least this is the best visual that I've been given when I asked to show myself. Our souls are a vibrational spherical form. And in the center of that spherical form is a really, really, really powerful point of light. And not just like a sun where we think the rays would go out around the edges, but from that center point, they go out in every direction. Well, each one of those rays of light is a facet of the soul. And each one of those rays of light shines its light through a window of expression, meaning that one window may be into this physical world, but yet another ray of light may be into another dimensional place or another parallel world. And that's where all of the awareness of the soul, where they were showing me that, oh, we're aware of everything at the soul level.
You mentioned this access to the awareness and that you learned how to do this. So this is something that you can do now on a regular basis.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, I do. One of the services that I offer for folks is called a soul painting. And a soul painting is an image. It's a painting about this size and not that one, because this has everything to do with the eclipse. I'm receiving wisdom about what's going to happen during the eclipse in this image. Um, so if a person comes to me and says, I would like to have a soul painting done. So I schedule a time to have a conversation via Zoom, and it's really not a scripted conversation. I ask them, "Well, how are you doing?" And how is your journey? Just basic things. And as they're speaking to me about their journey, it literally is if their soul will come and pull up a chair right here beside me and begin to tell me a story. And the story will begin in imagery. And I'll start to see images and I'll start to receive awareness of their origin, of the facet of their soul that's here. Where are the origins of that? Are they in this universe? Are they a place beyond that? um, where are those origins? And through the awareness of those origins, then the story is told, well, why did they come? What is the gift that is written in their DNA that through the collection of the wisdom that they've done over and over again in the journeys they've had, both here and in other dimensions, what is the gift that they're here to share with humanity so that the new earth and the new paradigms can be made manifest. Because each one of us holds a piece to the puzzle of that new manifestation. So, yes, I can. Every time I sit down to paint, whether it's a painting, anything you see here, I remember how that felt, and I return to that state of being, and just it's like I'm just like the radio, receiving the waves to play the song or to paint the picture and tell the story.
Yeah. You know, we were talking about walk-ins, that was it. But
Yes.
and
So
you
the walk-in thing is the at least in my awareness is there's a shift in that one of those rays, meaning, or what some might call a fractal, or a facet of the soul, a different facet of the soul. Because my first 40 years of life were really intense. You know, it's a long story to go down, but I experienced a lot of emotional, physical, and psychological violence in my first 18 years of life. And I know now that I agreed to come in and experience that, knowing that there would be a point where I would begin to see the gifts in all of it, so that I could then share that perspective with others, so that we step away from this merry-go-round of trauma, merry-go-round of grief, merry-go-round of illusion that we're feeding ourselves through the egoic perspective as the victim of all of this. When we see it from the perspective of the soul, remembering that we agreed to come and experience that exact thing because of the gift that was there to receive and express that gift here, all of that becomes irrelevant. There's no processing that needs to be done. We get to literally turn the light on and see the reality of what's taking place. So yes, another facet of our souls can step in.
hmm.
That's the walk-in aspect of it.
Yeah, because I always understood it to be like a whole other entirely different soul walks into your, which is, kind of
Mm-mm.
confusing.
It's another facet of your own, because our that powerful point of light has an innumerous number of rays of light
Hmm.
emitting out from it, and it's just a shift in the ray of light and all of the wisdom that that aspect holds. But from that center point of light is where comes our DNA, and
Hmm.
that DNA is in our body.
Right.
And what people don't realize is that people talk about what they call the Akashic records,
Hmm.
and they talk about it as if you have to access it and it's out there. The Akashic records is written in every cell of our body.
Hmm.
It's all right here to
Yeah,
call
it's still a
upon.
matter of accessing it, but yeah, for sure, it's within you.
But it's not accessing it out there.
Hmm.
It's aligning with it in here, because
Yeah.
it's already right here for us
Hmm.
to receive from. And many times when I'm in group meditations and things, one of the first things I'll do is I'll ask people, okay, let's today, for this moment right now, this is how I'll begin a meditation, a guided meditation. Let's set aside what we think we know about who we are, about why we're here, and what is about to happen. Let's set all that aside and just be the receiver, just like the radio is. And we're going to tune in to whatever it is we need to tune in today, setting aside, and I'll repeat that a number of times, setting aside what we think we know, because that's always what gets in the way. That's that chatter in the mind that won't shut up when we're trying to meditate, is what we think we know. And when we set that aside and are just the receiver, then that aperture starts to open up.
Yeah, it's
And what we
basically you're
have
like you're reformatting the tape, so to speak.
exactly, exactly,
All that
reformatting it.
accumulated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you mentioned about how, you're pretty, it was a rough period for you, and I can only imagine, I can't even imagine the 3 week interval between the two near-death experiences must have been something else. Like you could probably write a book just on those 3 weeks, but I'm wondering, like, did the awe of it all from after the first near-death experience leave you at that point in
Um,
between?
um, No, I think what had caused me to give up in the first place, to just be homeless and just give up on life and surrender my life to whatever was going to happen, was from the fact that my biological mother, um, when I was 10 months old, she packed her things and my two older brothers, who were only 14 months older than I am, packed her things and their things, put me in the floor of a kitchen in the apartment where she lived, and left.
My
And I was 10
goodness.
months old. I was an infant. And that the shock of that experience had blinded me to the possibilities of almost anything from my life. And when the mother whale came and allowed me to experience that motherly love, but not just any mother, the immense power of a mother whale and the presence of a mother whale, all of that was wiped away. So most of the time during that 3 weeks, I was still kind of there, letting myself realize that what that like that tape, that old tape, like it fast forwarded, I was not ever going to experience any of that ever again.
Mm.
And so from what I can remember, other than functioning, I was still homeless. But after about a week, there was a person a place where I had worked for a short time in a hostel, and the owner of the hostel had gotten word that I was homeless and said, "Please come here and stay." Well, I tell him, I said, "I don't have any money." He says, "Well, that's okay. We'll figure it out." And I stayed there for 2 weeks and then went to Karen's house, because I mean I didn't look good at all. I looked very sick. I looked like death. I like somebody might call that looking like death. I was very, very ill, and he asked her if I could go and stay with her, and that's when I went and stayed with her. But other than that functional part of just going about the day, there was a presence of that mother whale. I wanted to go back in the ocean, but Karen was like, "No, you can't go. You're too sick. You can't go out there and swim." All this kind of stuff. But I could feel that presence. And then when the second, after it was in the hospital and the second transition took place, it was almost as if that experience took a back burner to all of then there was this other layer of this sphere of awareness, and it was trying to assimilate all of that. And after the few questions from the nurse and then the doctor coming in, and she's like, maybe his brain did fry. That's when I just kind of shut down. I didn't say anything else about it. Whatever they asked me, yeah, I just agreed. I think I just agreed to.
Yeah.
I thought there was a part of me that thought, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to get in trouble or something." I don't know. I didn't know what to imagine would take.
Who found you at such a young age when that devastation occurred?
Um, an uncle.
Yeah.
We lived in the city of Louisville, Kentucky,
Yeah.
and I guess my mother lived, I don't know, I have any idea where the apartment was, but it was fairly close to where her mother's house was, and the grocery store where the whole family went. But yet this was an uncle that wasn't, they weren't, this uncle and my mother weren't speaking, which was kind of normal for my family. Um, but all of a sudden, the story that I was told by an aunt was that he saw her out at the grocery store with a suitcase and some kind of a bag on her shoulder, but only saw my two older brothers. And immediately it hit him, well, where's Jamie? I was called Jamie as an infant or as a child. Where's Jamie? And, so, their source stepped in and just guided him. And she said that he said to himself, "Oh my gosh, where is he?" And he said, my aunt said, he said without thinking, he just went to the apartment and he could hear me crying inside
Hmm.
in the through the window of the kitchen window of the apartment. And he called the police, and the police got involved. And I was sent as established what they call as a ward of the state. I was put in a foster place or something like that, and until the police got involved, and then the police found her and took my brothers away because if she did that to me, the police didn't know what they might do. She might do to them, and we all three became wards of the state. And about a year from then, we were all three adopted together.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Sure.
So
And you never heard from your biological mother?
I, the first time I heard from her, I was probably 11 or 12. She decided to come for a Christmas. I guess she had talked to the person that adopted me was her mother. But part of the psychological and emotional violence was all of this separation in the family. And um, I guess up until that time, they weren't going to allow her to come. I don't know. I never, each part of my family has a different story to tell. And so you have to take the pieces of the puzzle and figure out what you can figure out from it. And I haven't put much time to that. But
Sums it up for most families, though, James.
oh, okay. Well,
That's what
so
I think.
you
I mean, anyway, I don't know, in my realm, anyways. Yeah.
so
Not,
I
not,
saw
not, not,
her the
not
first
your beginnings. I'm just talking about the other stuff. Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
I saw her when I was 11 and she was kind of in and out. She wasn't there all the time and then she would
Mm.
appear again and kind of in and out and I don't think I ever gave much um like I didn't try and create a bond with her or anything like that. She was just there. But to me at that point it was irrelevant. And then when I was 18, I left home. I left home the first time when I was 16, but I was going to high school and I was an athlete and all kinds, and I just couldn't make that work at 16 out on the street on my own. And so I went back, and as soon as I graduated high school, I left and I went to California. And I probably saw her, I don't know, maybe three or four other times, maybe five times, because I left the country. I went and lived in Brazil for a while. I lived out for almost 10 years. And when I came back, I saw her. I actually stayed with her for a short time and then moved on. And but the interesting thing was that after I got basically stabilized, the hospital there in Hilo said I was stable enough. A social worker had contacted her. And I don't know what they told her, but I guess they said, you've got a son here that is probably not going to live very long, and we need to send him somewhere. And they sent me to her house,
Oh.
which was really interesting because I got to experience at 40 years old with a new set of a new aspect of awareness and of wisdom. I got to experience the first 9 months of my life again. Because when I went to her house, I was very ill and very fragile and I was in and out of the hospital until they could figure out what was going on with my bone marrow, that it wasn't cancer, it wasn't leukemia, and it's something called MAC, and each one of the words is about 15 letters long, and so even physicians refer to it as MAC, as MAC, and it's a bone marrow I think it's a bacterial infection that you can get in places like third world countries. And I had obviously picked it up in Brazil, but it had laid dormant until I had just, my immune system was down because I was living on the street and not eating and not taking care of myself and all that kind of stuff. But I got to experience 9 months of what I experienced when I was first born to 9 months, 10 months old. And it was the same absence. She behaved in a way that I don't know. I don't know to tell you if it really even mattered to her whether I was there or alive or not. And but I got to see the other side. I got to see why I had chosen to come and experience this. And it took quite a few years, but then I got to realizing, well, wait a minute. If I chose to come in and experience these things, so did she. So let me let go of this illusional perspective of trauma. Let me have compassion for her and let me have honor for her because she must be a really powerful soul that would decide to come in as a mother and do what she did to me. That has to be a powerful soul. That has to be a soul that says, I'll go and experience this so that this other soul can do the same and receive the gifts that are there to receive. I do not, and this is something that I have received full awareness of during my transitional experiences, and even especially now with all of this artwork, that even the mention of the word darkness and shadow is an absolute illusion. There is no darkness, there is no shadow. The only shadow that could exist is that point of light being right here and the human allowing the ego to step between you and that point of light and therefore cast the shadow. The ego is an illusion, therefore the shadow and the aspect or idea of darkness is also an illusion. It's not real. The only thing that's real is the light. And when we see that and we choose to see all of our lives and all of our experiences through that lens, everything changes. Everything changes instantly, just like it changed for me when during my transitional experiences. All 8 billion of us that as souls have chosen to be here right now in this moment are here because each one of us holds a piece to that puzzle written in our DNA of what is the new earth and what is that fifth dimensional awareness and what is the new paradigms. The paintings here on the walls show, like this painting right here, this is Mother Earth rising out of her old paradigm and into her new paradigm. And this is the midwife that has come. Midwife, and I asked my soul, well, is it really a midwife? And it's as if my soul was searching for a word because we don't have language sufficient for expressing these things. But many times a person will ask me, well, what is that? And I'll receive from my soul a series of words that come close to expressing. So it's midwife slash conductor. And I mean conductor of an orchestra. So it's as if this midwife has in tow with her all of these seeing moons that are being placed, and many of them have already arrived around the earth, these seeing moons that hold the vibrational awareness of the new paradigms that will exist on the new earth. And then I asked my soul, well, how is the moon going to introduce those? What's that process? And my soul says, well, does the moon that you already have not already move all of the waters of your earth? It moves the tides, rises and falls. That's the same energy that these moons will have to move humans in the direction of a new way of seeing so that that new earth can be expressed through us as us.
There's beautiful paintings. The one in the corner, is that another phase of what
Here,
you're in the corner in the opposite side behind you.
opposite side.
Look the
Oh,
other
the one right
direction.
behind me?
You know, and then up on the shelf.
Oh, this one.
That's the one, yeah.
On the wall.
Exactly.
Okay. That is, I can bring you a little closer. And let's see if I can.
I love that one.
Okay. So this is Mother Earth. Just as we are all souls, so is Mother Earth a soul. Mother Earth, eons and eons and eons ago, made an agreement with Source. to be made manifest here and be the place where all humans would come and all the experiences that humans would have. And this last 250,000 year cycle of human presence here is not the first time we've been here. We've been here thousands of times over. Over 4 billion years, we've been here many, many times through cycles of coming, being here, evolving, and being extinct. And so this is a depiction of her rising up to her new phase because she's done. She's done with the agreement that she made with Source, and she is now preparing to rise into a vibrational state, and only those who will align themselves with her will follow her into that new earth, who will choose to rise into that awareness, because all of the things that, especially that humans have done, one thing that my soul made me aware of is that in all of the cycles of human presence here on this earth, um, over the eons of time, never before have humans been so destructive as they are this time around. And that's why the agreement was made up until that point. And now the earth herself is shifting and preparing to rise up, having completed her contract, if you will, her agreement with Source itself, and ready to. It's like the peeling of the skin. It's like that layer of what was is leaving. She's in her fast forward phase now. Humans are trying to cling on to old ways, and they're trying to cling on to what they think they know. And what most humans don't realize is the moment that you surrender and let go of all of that, the beautiful brilliance of the soul steps in and allows us to see a much more brilliant way, a much more enlightened way of awareness. And that expansion then just starts to it's infinite.
When do you think we should expect this like kind of final shift or ascension of the Earth to happen within the context of our Earth time?
Whenever I ask my own soul that question, the same answer always comes. It's up to you. We're ready. The soul, the ethereal, it's all there. But yet we've got humans that'll teach people that something needs to be activated, or something needs to be processed first, or something that, when all of that is, it's what I call, referred to as the merry-go-round effect. You put people on a merry-go-round and they just keep coming back to the same place. None of that is true. Everything that is the new earth, that is the new paradigms and the wisdom, it's already all there, waiting for us to do this, to pull back the curtain of what we think we know and see it. And so when, I don't know. I don't think anyone can tell you. One thing I do know is whatever is coming through this painting for the eclipse next Monday is going to hold a key that's going to open many doors, so that many people will be able to kind of like take the blinders off, of the blinders of beliefs that keep the aperture like right here, so I can only see what's right here, and realize that, holy shit, what I've been looking for is right there, and it's been there the whole time.
Hmm.
But I've been holding these beliefs of what I see right here and blinding myself to the fact that it was always right there. What I can tell you is this: our Mother Earth is going to come to a point where she's not going to wait anymore. She's going to start rocking and rolling and shaking, and waters are going to rise, and things are going to start shifting, whether we're ready or not. That I can tell you is not far off.
James, thank you so much for everything, for for sharing your near-death experiences and your take on all of this. It's been really, really interesting. Thank you so much for being here and sharing it with us.
Oh, you're very welcome. Well, thank
Yeah,
you so much for doing
my
this.
pleasure, man. Thank you.